My name is Eleanor, and I am 71 years old. For most of my life I have lived quietly, in the same house where my late husband and I raised our children. The rhythm of the years shaped me. Birthdays, holidays, school mornings, late nights at the hospital when William fell ill. And then 11 years ago, when he passed, that rhythm collapsed. It left me with silence, thick, unsettling silence that pressed against the walls of my little cottage and echoed in my bones. I did what many widows do. I filled the days with small tasks, errands, and routines that looked ordinary but kept me moving. I cooked meals that no one shared. I tended the roses in the garden because William used to love them. I dusted the same bookshelves over and over, pretending it mattered. But deep inside, something fragile was breaking. What frightened me most was not the loneliness itself, but the idea that maybe this was all that was left for me. Just waiting for days to end, watching years slip by quietly. One evening, I sat in the living room wrapped in William's old cardigan. The lamp glowed softly beside me, and for some reason, I decided not to turn on the television. Instead, I let the silence stretch. That silence did not feel empty this time. It felt like a presence, as though it was urging me to face myself. I got up almost without thinking, and walked to the mirror in the hallway. I looked at my reflection, the lines on my face, the weariness in my eyes, the stillness in my shoulders. But I also saw something else. A flicker of defiance, like the young woman I used to be, the one who once painted landscapes until midnight, who danced barefoot in the kitchen while William laughed at her carefree spirit. Where had she gone? That night, something stirred awake. I pulled out an old sketchbook hidden at the bottom of a drawer, one that still carried faint traces of charcoal smudges. My hand trembled as I picked up a pencil, but when the tip touched the paper, I felt a surge of life. It was not about skill anymore. It was about remembering who I was. Days turned into weeks, and my evenings slowly filled with color again. I painted the trees outside my window, the roses in the garden, and sometimes even abstract shapes that reflected the storm of emotions inside me. With every brushstroke, I felt as though I was stitching myself back together. But change never comes without resistance. There were nights when I sat staring at a blank canvas, the weight of doubt heavy on my chest. "You're too old for this," a cruel voice inside whispered. "No one cares about your silly hobbies." On those nights, I almost gave up. Almost. But then I remembered William's words, once spoken long ago when I doubted myself. "The world doesn't need you to be perfect. It needs you to be real." So I kept going. Something else shifted too. I began to open the windows more often, letting the evening air sweep into the house. I sat outside with a cup of tea, watching the sky turn shades of amber and violet. I walked into town instead of driving, pausing to notice the small bookstore tucked between two shops. And one afternoon, I dared to step inside. The man behind the counter greeted me warmly. "Looking for something in particular?" he asked. "Not really," I said, running my fingers along the spines of novels. "Maybe something that reminds me how much living there still is to do." He chuckled, but his words stayed with me. Sometimes books find us when we're ready for them. I left with a collection of poetry, and that night I read aloud to myself, the sound of my own voice filling the silence. It felt almost like company. As months passed, I noticed the world responding to me differently. Or perhaps, I was responding differently to the world. A young woman at the cafe struck up a conversation about my sketchbook when she noticed it on the table. An old friend I had not spoken to in years wrote me a letter after I finally gathered the courage to send one first. And one morning my daughter called and said, "Mom, you sound lighter. Happier. What's changed?" I smiled, though she could not see it. "I think," I said softly, "I've remembered who I am." The most profound shift, however, was internal. For years I believed that the best chapters of my life were behind me, sealed in memory. But now I understand something different. Life does not stop giving if we are willing to receive. Joy is not a privilege of the young. It is a choice available at any age. There are still moments of loneliness, of course. Nights when I miss William so fiercely that it aches. But those moments no longer define me. They remind me of love, of the life we shared, and of the courage it takes to live on. So if you are listening, and you feel the weight of years pressing down, hear this. You are not done yet. There is no expiration date on joy, on passion, on rediscovering yourself. You may not choose what life takes from you, but you can choose what you create in its place. And maybe, just maybe, that choice will change everything.